If you ask anyone, tell me about Monty, probably the first thing they'd say is he loves to play basketball. And from grade 4 onwards, that was my passion. And they kind of took that from me. They took my passion away.
Berating and yelling of not just me, of other players. He called us retards, pussies, soft, waste of a player was the usual jargon.
If a teacher's calling a student a pussy and a faggot, I think that's grounds for firing.
Serious allegations of emotional abuse against teenage athletes at the prestigious St. Michael's University School in Victoria have been quietly bubbling since 2011. Testimonies from 13 students in 2012 alleged several licensed teachers routinely bullied and emotionally abused young athletes. Those allegations have been vigorously denied by the school. While declining interview requests, the school's headmaster, Bob Snowden, did provide this written response, saying that a series of reviews by the school and the province have cleared his coaches of any wrongdoing. While acknowledging that profanity-laced insults were fired at students by coaches, the reviews concluded the conduct was not out of line in the context of competitive athletics. The two sides in this debate raise interesting questions about how competitive young athletes in this country should be trained, and whether tough-minded, profanity-filled criticism inspires excellence or leaves impressionable young people emotionally damaged. Renowned sports psychologist Dr. Alan Goldberg reviewed testimonies from some SMU students and is now treating Monty for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Having worked with tons of athletes across every sport at every level, I've learned over the years what happens psychologically when an athlete's playing really well, and what are the things that cause an athlete to shut down. Where you're yelling at kids, where you're humiliating them when they make mistakes, where you're demeaning them. What it does is it heightens their anxiety level, it gets them overthinking, it kills their love of the sport, and it sets them up for performance problems. There's nothing constructive about it.
Several of the students and parents complained about Ian Hyde-Lay, a veteran coach who earned his legacy 2 decades ago coaching NBA star Steve Nash. In 2012, a Vancouver lawyer named John Sanderson reviewed the allegations on behalf of the school. After interviewing 35 students, he concluded that while profanity and criticism was used by some coaches, the conduct was not deliberately abusive or demeaning. For some players, he wrote, the move to competitive high school level sports was an increasingly demanding burden on their ego and self-confidence. He recommended the school review and reconsider coaching behavior and create a code of conduct for its coaches. And to the Sanderson report, which essentially concluded that most guys on the team were supportive of the coaching, and that some players are just unable to make the transition to the more competitive style of senior boys basketball. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. Even the coaches said in grade 11, they wrote on my report card, I was, one of the best players to ever go through the SMU basketball program.
Every kid can adjust. We all knew what we were quote-unquote getting into. What we didn't prepare for was how bad our treatment would be. It wasn't an adjustment, it was just, it was terrible treatment.
Jennifer Fraser, Monty's mother, was a teacher at the school at the time. Outraged by the treatment she saw from coaches, she filed complaints to the province's teacher regulation branch against several of her colleagues in 2012.
These are my colleagues. This is my headmaster. I was so surprised because these people, from all my experiences with them, are charming. They're smart, they are kind, they are dedicated, they're hardworking, and it's just that it's behind closed doors. An entirely other persona obviously comes to the fore.
The commissioner, Bruce Preston, dismissed all of Fraser's allegations in these reports. In considering allegations of profane criticism aimed at students by Hyde-Lay, Preston concluded that while the coach's conduct was not ideal, it did not amount to misconduct. In part, that's because it happened in the context of competitive sport at the senior high school level, where it is a common feature that coaches push students to achieve their very best, including by yelling and gesturing and expressing disappointment or frustration.
I tried everything in my power to try and protect not only my son, but all of the students. I felt completely responsible for them, and I felt that the only thing to do was to continue to fight on their behalf, and I, to this day, continue to fight for them.
Experts like Goldberg say this coaching style can leave lingering psychological impacts on young players long after they quit the game they love.
What's the long-term clinical outlook for players who go through the kind of treatment that we're talking about here?
They end up being traumatized by it. Okay, and what I mean by that is they memorize those experiences. The images, the emotion, the anxiety attached to it, the thinking that is associated with it, that will stay in their system. And this trauma, the effects of this can linger for years. They could have sleep disturbance for years. They could have overwhelming anxiety, depression issues, especially when it goes unpunished.
How did this impact you emotionally, psychologically?
Emotionally and psychologically, I was completely distraught. I was having panic attacks. I felt as though I was worthless, not only as an athlete, but as a person. And I felt ashamed. I really did. I felt, at times, maybe I am a pussy. You start to question yourself. But I know now that what I did was the right thing, and that there was no other, thing for me to do but to come forward.
Are you still suffering from any of these symptoms?
Yeah, I'm suffering for sure. I talked to Alan Goldberg the other week, and it's this kind of emotional abuse. It's something that I think I'll deal with for the rest of my life, what was done to me.
I think he's still struggling now. I believe that he wanted to play basketball. He still is suffering from lack of confidence. I think he's still having problems sleeping. He's having PTSD symptoms, as far as I know. And the tragedy for me is he had this dream. He really wanted to play Division I ball. And from what I understand, he was good enough to do that. And that's gone.
A lot of people at Oregon ask me, you're Canadian, why'd you choose Oregon? And I tell them, I always wanted to go to an American school. And, that's not the case. I always wanted to go to UBC, where my family went, but I had to escape SMU. I no longer wanted to be known as a pussy and a liar and a faggot. I wanted to just be Monty.
Does this still impact you today?
Yes. Oh. When I play basketball today, I'm still affected every time I play because I hear the coaches' voices in my head, berating me, calling me the names, saying I'm not good enough.
If you could go back in time, would you have done the same thing? Would you have made this complaint? Would you have pursued this?
Yes. Because it was the right thing to do. It was the truth. And it's not the easiest path to tell the truth, but it's the right one. And you gotta let the truth have its day.
What was bottom for you?
Probably not going to graduation ceremony, not playing basketball, the game I love.
Parents like George Stockus continue to demand answers with letters and inquiry requests to the province.
I would have been happy to wash my hands of this. The kids are, they came forward, they said their thing, and they're not liars.
Is there a moral to this story for you? Is there a lesson?
Well, I just hope that this story could inspire other athletes, to come forward who have been abused. And, it's a time when, coaches can't get away with this anymore. This is not acceptable behavior, and kids need to be protected and be able to play the sport that they love.